To say to the tax increasers, go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's Friday. Jesus is praying. Peter's sleeping. Judas is betraying. But Sunday's coming. It's Friday. Pilate's struggling. The council is conspiring. The crowd is vilifying. They don't even know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The disciples are running like sheep without a shepherd. Mary's crying. Peter is denying. But they don't know that Sundays are coming. It's Friday. The Romans beat my Jesus. They robe him in scarlet. They crown him with thorns. But they don't know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday. See Jesus walking to Calvary. His blood dripping, his body stumbling, and his spirit's burdened. But you see, it's only Friday. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The world's winning. People are sinning, and evil's grinning. It's Friday. The soldiers nailed my Savior's hands to the cross. They nailed my Savior's feet to the cross. And then they raised him up next to criminals. It's Friday. But let me tell you something. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The disciples are questioning what has happened to their king. And the Pharisees are celebrating that their scheming has been achieved. But they don't know it's only Friday. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. He's hanging on the cross, feeling forsaken by his Father, left alone and dying. Can nobody save him? Oh, it's Friday. But Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The earth trembles. The sky grows dark. My King yields his spirit. It's Friday. Hope is lost. Death has won. Sin has conquered. And Satan's just a laughing. It's Friday. Jesus is buried. A soldier stands guard, and a rock is rolled into place. But it's Friday. It is only Friday. Sunday is a coming.
All right, it's Good Friday, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. That's S.M. Lockridge, something that we play every Friday, every Good Friday, here on the program. And what an interesting Good Friday is. It is when you consider what's going on in America. It's a very, very unique Good Friday because we are, on the heels of the, in the wake, if you will, of the Mueller report being released. In my opinion, the press conference yesterday that I was hyping up I kind of hyped it up all show, this William Barr press conference that where he was releasing the Mueller report. And it didn't disappoint to me. I mean, it had kind of a little bit of everything. And when liberals have to start, this is how liberals really believe that politics is about theater. I saw one critique, maybe it was a Hollywood guy. They were like, just because, speaking of William Barr, just because you say things in a monotone voice doesn't mean they're true. I'm like, interesting. They really don't like the fact that William Barr is a model of credibility. Now, they're trying to say that he's not now, of course, because they disagree with him, with his statements, because they don't help one side's, political ambitions, and so now you got to get personal and everything else. But it was fascinating. If you've been living under a rock, which you probably have not been living under a rock, if you're listening to this show over the last 24 hours, we now know it's even more crystal clear that there was no collusion. There was not one American, period. Not even so. This special counsel investigation goes even further. Not just the Trump campaign. Did the Trump campaign collude with Russia? Did a member of the Trump? No, they say not even one American conspired with Russia to help them attempt to meddle in our election. I don't think the Russians, changed one vote, but that's just me. Interestingly enough, William Barr does report on what Bob Mueller reported in terms of this idea that it was the Russians that in fact hacked the DNC, the Democrat National Committee, and then the Russians somehow passed that information on to WikiLeaks. Interestingly enough, Bob Mueller never sought to interview Julian Assange, never sought to interview anyone, because Julian Assange is on record saying that their source for those emails was not the Russian government. So there is still this, they're still advancing this narrative that some people, for example, and the only reason I am on the fence as to whether or not the Russians actually hacked the DNC, it wasn't something else, is because of a guy named William Binney. William Binney was a contractor for the NSA and turned into an NSA whistleblower a long time ago, and he went out at what, in my opinion, at great personal risk, and started talking about some of these Fourth Amendment concerns that are out there when it comes to invasion of your privacy. And he basically says, just from analyzing the leaks, the DNC, that it would have been very difficult. If you look at the download time, it would be very difficult for it to have been the Russians, hacking in overseas. It would have had to have been somebody physically there, at least NSA whistleblower William Binney. That's what he says. Anyway, but that's getting way off into the weeds. The bottom line is this: the mainstream media will not let it go. They absolutely refuse to admit that they have been actively deceiving the American people, actively deceiving the people who trust them to bring them the news on a daily basis. And they are now doubling down. And they're also, just as I said, we know that you can't listen to them, but they're taking the report out of context. So let's give you one example here. You guys heard this one. This is what they ran with, right? Donald Trump said, quote, "I'm effed," when Mueller was appointed as special counsel, right? And so that's what they ran with. They ran with this quote right now. So when Donald Trump finds out from Jeff Sessions that there's going to be a special counsel appointed, quote, "Oh my God, this is terrible. This is the end of my presidency. I'm effed." Okay? End quote. They take that quote right there and they run with it. Now that's the headline. And I was looking at some of the comments of people who were reading, and they said, oh my gosh, he admitted that he's guilty. It's like, wait a second. And that's exactly the mainstream media knew exactly what they were doing, putting out that statement and that statement alone. It's actually on page 78 of the Mueller report. If you actually look at its entirety, if you would keep reading, you go on, and he right after he said, oh no, I'm screwed. Quote, he said this, according to the report. Everyone tells me if you get one of these independent counsels, it ruins your presidency. It takes years and years, and I won't be able to do anything. This is the worst thing that ever happened to me. So it's not about that he's done something wrong and he's going to be exposed. He's essentially maintaining his innocence here. He's saying if you get a special counsel, I'm not going to be able to get any of my agenda passed for the American people. I'm going to have a harder time getting funding for the wall, and certainly he has. People in my own party might not want to work with me, and yeah, that certainly was an issue as well. There were Republicans for a while. They're like, yeah, he won, but he's a Russian agent. They were believing this bogus lie, this absolutely bogus lie, and now everybody who is potentially under investigation, or probably already is under investigation. Let's just go ahead and say this. James Comey, Lisa Page, Peter Strzok. So Devin Nunes last week makes referrals. Last week we had Congressman Rick Crawford on. I asked him about this. He's on the the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, Arkansas's Rick Crawford. And I asked him, I say, so what's up with these criminal referrals, Devin Nunes? And, you can't... There's no specific names listed, but what Rick basically was saying was like, there's obviously open source reporting on all of this. We know who these Department of Justice officials were. So here's the speculation. The Office of Inspector General has been looking into what happened with Hillary's emails and the Department of Justice leading up to this whole fiasco. And what I want to know at this point is, in the wake of the Mueller report, what I would like to know is, what was the initial scope of the Mueller investigation? Meaning, is it possible that Rod Rosenstein, who, again, was sitting right there or sitting to the left of William Barr in that press conference, looked like a prisoner, by the way. I don't know. I'm sorry, that's just the way I saw it. Rod Rosenstein did not look happy. He smirked at the very end because William Barr was taking the press pool to school. William Barr embarrassed that press corps yesterday because they were in this meltdown mode because they'd been given their talking points like, should you really be having this press conference right now when we don't have the report? I mean, it was brilliant to watch. But you've got Rod Rosenstein sitting there who's looks like a deer in the headlights. He doesn't look like he wants to be there, but he is. And, what are you going to do about it? What I want to know is, did Rod Rosenstein use the Steele dossier that has been discredited, that was also used to, and by the way, the Mueller report actually, if you read it, there's a part in there which leads the special counsel to conclude that the Steele dossier is not accurate. Did Rod Rosenstein start the special counsel or direct the special counsel based on that phony dossier? If that's the case, the entire investigation, which we're going to find out, was predicated with no evidence. It was all started on something that was completely bogus in the first place. And the investigation did not start with George Papadopoulos. And that's the other thing we're going to say. This what's her name? John Solomon, Sarah Carter. They've been really good at reporting about what Operation Crossfire Hurricane was. We're going to find out all of this. And so all of the people who are now on the hook, they're now coming out saying, the Mueller report, they're using this term roadmap. First of all, when's the last time you've heard from Hillary Clinton's campaign manager? When's the last time you heard from him? John Podesta. He's a weirdo. And that's putting it mildly. John Podesta, over at Breitbart.com, go to this one. Headline, John Podesta, Mueller report lays out devastating case against Trump. The longtime Clintonista, Mueller lays out a devastating case against the president, but explicitly says in the introduction to the obstruction section that given the Justice Department policy against indicting a sitting president, it would be unfair to draw the conclusion that seems obvious from the facts that follow because Trump wouldn't be able to defend himself in a court of law. Mueller got us this far. Now it's Congress's turn to weigh the evidence against the president, decide what merits a response, and act in the best interest of our democracy. Sounds like John Podesta really, really, really wants Trump to be impeached. Interesting. And you just tell me if you think all of this is a coincidence. Let's see. What do we have next? Andrew McCabe. Andrew McCabe probably going to jail. Andrew McCabe, Mueller left roadmap for prosecutors after Trump leaves office. Appearing Thursday on MSNBC, fired FBI Director Andrew McCabe, Deputy Director, agreed with host Rachel Maddow that Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report on alleged Trump-Russia collusion offers prosecutors a, quote, roadmap to pursue charges against President Trump when he leaves office. Next, James Clapper, the former Director of Intelligence. James Clapper, Mueller report, devastating, quote, roadmap for impeachment. Look at this one. Go up to the top. Let's look at the headline. Devastating, there's that word again, roadmap for impeachment. Appearing Thursday on CNN's Cuomo Primetime, former Director of National Intelligence James Clapper said Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report is devastating and provides a roadmap for impeachment of President Donald Trump, despite exonerating him of criminal conspiracy. I think some people are really nervous out there about what's to follow. That man, James Clapper, lied to Congress in an easily proven lie. I mean, you know, and then look at the rest of the media, okay? ABC's John Carl. Mueller report shows significant Trump-Russia contact collusion. Using the word, quote, contact collusion. CNN's Dana Bash said, well, technically we were right because it is collusion. It is collusion. Well, collusion's never been a legal term. And they're like, yes, exactly. Exactly, you see? So we were right. The Mueller report definitely shows collusion. Well, what is that? What is that? Talking to somebody? Is it contact? Is it the fact that the Russians were reaching out? You know, and then you got Mayor Rudolph Giuliani, one of the president's attorneys, on Fox News with Brett Baer and Chris Wallace yesterday, and he's saying, listen, these entire meetings were setups. When William Barr uses the term spying, when William Barr last week, he said everybody, you know, in a frenzy when he said, I believe that there was spying done on the Trump campaign. Well, that would mean Donald Trump was right again about something he was wildly mocked when he said that he was wiretapped and this has been a rigged investigation. The fact of the matter is, according to, well, apparently from what Giuliani said, these Trump Tower meetings, all of it was a setup. When you've got the Natalia girl, before you go to the Trump Tower meeting, meets with Fusion GPS before the meeting, the day of the meeting, she talks with them before going into the Trump Tower meeting? Come on now. We're going to find all of this out. And for you people out there that don't have the stomach for this and are like, hey, now that Trump, some of you people in the middle, hey, now that it's over, he doesn't need to go investigate the investigators. Are you kidding me? You need to do your research. You need to actually dig in and actually don't just get your news from CNN. This was serious. This was serious. This was they're projecting the very thing they're guilty of. It was Russia meddling in the election. No, it was powerful Department of Justice officials trying to meddle in our elections. And they did far worse than Russia did by hiring some, trolls to post stuff on Facebook or in, comment sections. They did far more damage. And they're falling into their own nets. They have laid their nets for the president. They have laid their nets for the president's advisors, and they continue to fall into their own nets. Everything continues to backfire on them. It really does. Everything continues to backfire. It's Good Friday. We've got a great Johnny Cash Good Friday for you, where we're listening to most of his gospel songs, which are fantastic. We're going to be back in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I understand we got a special guest on the line. We've got the former state senator Brian King is back with us. Brian, how you been, sir?
Hey, doing good. Just working and making payments and paying my taxes and stuff.
Yep, doing the right thing. Well, I'm just curious. The session, 92nd General Assembly session's over. Were you watching things that were happening from afar back home?
Well, I still read the propaganda out of a lot of the newspapers that we see, and Of course, the article today popped up. And
what do you think about that? Article today, Governor Hutchinson says that the 92nd General Assembly was, quote, the greatest of all time.
Well, I just go back to see my real life is being a farmer. And, it's that old saying, wait till the hay's in the barn. Wait till, whatever you want to say about the session and this and that. And I saw a lot of things a lot of debatable things happen, but you have to wait. I mean, and, of course, they go to the liberal people to give their assessment of his, comment. And, of course, they go back to expansion of government type things. But I would say probably one of the greatest sessions it turned out was even before I came when Governor Huckabee was down there. And then when he left, leaves almost $1 billion surplus. And that session in 2007 that I came in, which I can't take credit for it. Give the credit to Governor Huckabee. We only did what he left. And he leaves almost $1 billion surplus. We have the largest tax cutting, not tax raising, not raising this, taking money out of one person's pocket, trying to give it to another one. And, the largest tax cutting session in Arkansas history happened in 2007 because of the work of Governor Huckabee and legislative leaders before when I came in. And we gave $456 million to schools. I mean, that was money in the bank that went out into construction that we might have disagreed how that might have been spent, better spent in highways or less in schools or this, that. But the fact is, you had money in the bank. I mean, I really am like, today's society is more about what you say than what you produce later, because you're just going to try to talk your way out of it or lie or get out of it once things don't turn out the way they do. I mean, I don't know how anybody can sit there and say something like that, even if it was Brian King, when you don't even know the results yet. That just blows my mind.
Have you been following all of the tax increases that happened this session? And I know we have some Republicans who are saying are going to try to tweak the numbers and make it seem like it was somehow a net tax cut. But we have other Republicans. Matter of fact, I saw a Facebook post by State Representative Jim Dotson, who said, you know what, the bottom line is this: the people are going to be paying more money after this 92nd General Assembly.
Yeah, there's going to be more paid in taxes than there will be given out. I mean, that's what happens in today's world. That's why, we go back to the history. This is not a surprise. I mean, this is a product of what's been happening down there. We have all these Republicans oppose Obamacare. What do? They go down there and implement Obamacare in a more expensive form of Obamacare, and then 2015, let's go back to Jim Hendren, how, the private option is going to end, but it didn't end, okay? It just has kept going. And so, it just keeps going. That's why this is...
So what's going to happen?
Time today to sit there and see how...
What do you think is going to happen when Mueller now testifies? Oh, by the way, there are some dank memes out there. We're going to get to those in a minute. I think my favorite one, though, is the Ferris Bueller one. At the end of Ferris Bueller, he comes across and he's like, "You guys are still here? It's over." They do in Deadpool, too. And they've got one of those where Ferris Bueller's replaced with Bob Mueller. There's a Robert Mueller. He comes around the corner. He's like, in his bathrobe. He's like, "You guys still here? It's over. Go home." What are the Democrats going to do when Bob Mueller testifies and confirms all of this? Like, doesn't be like, well, the president, he had me in a chokehold and he told me he'd kill me if I didn't write the report the way he wanted. Like when that doesn't happen, what exactly are the Democrats going to do then? We got to up against the hard break. Back in just a minute. No, don't go anywhere.
The results of things doesn't matter. They just repackage it, lie, whatever they need to do. And then what you see now is they try and attack you personally and just tell lies about you and misinterpret anything you say towards them to get the focus off of what is really happened down there is that, yeah, they're going to pay more taxes, but there's no accountability in the truth out there in the media. There's some good reporters out there, and I think they've heard me say that. They know who I think they are. But yet, if you look at what's happened up there at the Capitol and the reporting, it's like this article. I mean, I don't know. It just is very troubling to see what's been going on. And, just keep fighting it. I don't sit there and back down. The other day, John Moritz, who covered some of the Senate Judiciary Committee meetings, was disparaging Jeremy Hutchinson. And you know what? I called him out on Twitter. The guy never answered. I mean, you know why? Because he protected Jeremy Hutchinson. There was exchanges between me and Jeremy Hutchinson. He never did. He disparaged me and tried to protect Jeremy Hutchinson. And then now everything's come out bad. He's starting to say things.
What were your thoughts? I mean, Jeremy Hutchinson indicted for the second time last week on charges that we thought he was going to be indicted the first time. This was the bribes that he was allegedly taking from Preferred Family Health Care. What were your thoughts on that, considering that you ran a Medicaid disclosure bill several times that could never pass? Four times that would have required Jeremy Hutchinson to disclose he was getting $9,000 a month from a Medicaid provider for doing no legal work.
Yeah, but you can have all the laws you want to, and if they don't pay attention to them, remember this ban on lobbying thing, and then you had John Burris, he's a consultant. You had this ban on lobbying, yet they find jobs for Johnny Key and all these other government jobs that are not lobbying, but they're government rewards. I mean, they're rewards for. So there's so many ways to get around it. And, in fact, in a debate on the Senate floor, I asked Jeremy Hutchinson, "Do you disclose who your clients are?" And he said yes. He lied. He just lied. I mean, I just and no questions, nothing about Jim Hendren and his involvement with Jeremy. You've got to see Michael Lamoureux mentioned. You see court documents came out even a while back. It's been some time that somehow Cranford was working with the governor at that time to get a convicted murderer out earlier or something like that. A convicted felon, let's say. No questions. Nobody asked anything about that. You have Senator F that comes out in this last thing. No questions about that. So, it's almost like something has to come out in court documents where they have to see it. But,
yeah.
Back on this point, my gosh, I just even Governor Beebe would not have said something like that. I mean, it just... You're
talking about Ace's comments that this was the greatest of all time, the greatest session of all time? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah. I don't know. But like I said, once you live in a world down there right now where nobody questions anything, no one says anything, and, they look around and they think, well, you're going to have like a race like mine where you're going to have $200,000+ of dark money for these cowards that fund these races, to sit there and, tell lies about you. I mean, somebody brought up the other day, Americans Prosperity rated me the same as Will Bond and Joyce Elliott. I mean, ouch. And so would you say crooked and rigged on that deal to try and make things? But it just hopefully is anything, the truth will finally come out. And, like I said, I just can't even believe in today's world was you have to wait and see what the end thing is. But that's not the way it goes today. Today you just go out and say whatever, promise anything, lie whatever, and then 2 years later when it turns out bad, you recraft it. You recraft your words, and then you'd say, well, it wasn't that, it was this, and you're being mean.
All right, folks, welcome back to the program on this Johnny Cash Friday on Good Friday. So we're taking a tour of his gospel songs, his catalog of gospel songs. Folks, he's a nationally recognized expert on foreign policy and energy. You've heard him on the program before. You've also seen him over at the Daily Caller, Newsmax, The Hill, as a contributor there. His name is Dan Perkins, and he's welcome back on the program. He's on the program again. Dan, how are you, sir?
I'm fine, thank you, and thank you for having me on again.
Absolutely. It's always great to have you. So, I I want to get your reaction. I know we're going to talk a little bit about this weapons test over North Korea, but I'd love to know what your thoughts are on this Mueller report and the findings and where we are, where we've been, where we're going, Dan.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk about that. I really believe that we are on a journey to redemption. I think what happened in our country, where the government had decided, non-elected people in the government had decided that we, the people, as to quote Hillary, were the deplorables, that we weren't capable of making the decisions of how we should be governed and what should happen. So they had to take it away from us, and they had to decide what it was going to be. We reached a point where there were so many things that were being done in this country that the common citizens, the true patriots, wondered openly, this is not my country. This is not what I went through when I was a child. This is not what I believe. This is not what I grew up believing. This is something different, and I don't like it. And so they decided that they'd had enough of the elites, and this clearly was a rejection of the elitists in Washington, D.C. and the deep state when they found out that the deep state was trying to take away from them, the people, the right to determine the direction of this country. And it took somebody like Donald Trump to try and stop it. In many respects, the Mueller investigation was the high watermark of the elites, and its outcome proved to all Americans that the millions, tens of millions of dollars was wasted. They could find no evidence of collusion, and yet we took 2 years of our lives, virtually daily, with the press reporting 93% of the time negatives about Donald Trump. And none of it was true. And the mainstream media lied to us and continues to lie to us with apparently no consequences for doing so. Now, I noticed that MSNBC and CNN are seeing significant decline in their viewership. I don't know whether that'll hold up forever, but if we didn't have this reaction, if we didn't have the people rising up and saying this is not acceptable, and the momentum changed in this country long before the Mueller report, because you could see, if you follow, as I do, the polling data, you could see that America had turned away from what it thought about Donald Trump to something much more favorable and wanted a better country.
We're talking again with Dan Perkins. Yeah, and what I've noticed from some people who, I on social media, some people that I am friends with, it's interesting. The ones who have kind of claimed to be on the fence and we need to wait and see what the Mueller report is and da-da-da-da-da, but I kind of think they're just really kind of closet Trump haters. They seem to be even more devastated than even those on the far left, because now they're saying, well, we spent 2 years and they don't mention anything, Dan, about the no collusion. It seems like they're moving the goalposts now, and now they're saying, well, the obstruction was unclear. We don't know if he obstructed justice, and it's very frustrating, because if he didn't commit a crime, how could he obstruct justice?
Right. It's a great point that the Democrats are unwilling to accept as a fact of life. If there was no crime, then there was no collusion. And there was no collusion crime, then there can be no obstruction of justice. The one thing that amazes me is that the left continues to talk about the dismissal of James Comey. There are federal statutes that give to the president the power to replace any officer, cabinet officer, or any senior official in the administration at his will. And there have so the law says that because James Comey was appointed by Barack Obama to be Attorney General, didn't mean that when Donald Trump walked in the door on January the 21st, 2017, he couldn't fire him with no repercussions. So the idea that, what they're talking about is they're saying one thing, but they're not telling the American people the whole truth. They say there was obstruction, and when really pressed hard, they say the obstruction was the firing of James Comey. Well, it is within the presidential powers to fire any officer, and including the head of the FBI. So he didn't break the law. If he didn't break the law, then there's no reason to indicate that he should be impeached or whatever because he fired James Comey.
Yeah.
It is a part of the rhetoric that they just don't seem to want to admit that they're wrong, and that's really an important message. The Democrats never admit that they're wrong.
Yeah, and
never admit it.
With Comey, there's a ton of questions about him at this point. We know he leaked classified material after he was fired, which then allegedly was part of what led to the special counsel. I would like to know, well, if Andrew McCabe was talking about wearing a wire or trying to convince members of his cabinet to invoke the 25th Amendment, where was Comey in all of that? I think there's and it's interesting that they're all out today, Dan. John Podesta, I haven't heard from him in a long time, but he's in the news talking about a roadmap to impeachment. McCabe is out there. Comey has got weird, quick, cryptic tweets again. Then you've got James Clapper out there saying this is a roadmap. They're all using this term roadmap, and I wouldn't put it past the deep state, if you will, to now kind of activate the Southern District of New York even more and get the Southern District of New York to try to go after Trump even more.
Well, first of all, I mean, that's a very keen observation. First of all, the Southern District of New York is part of the Justice Department, and the Attorney General, Mr. Barr, is the one who decides what's going to happen in the Justice Department, not James Clapper. The other thing is that they talk about, if you go back a little bit in time, and after the midterm elections, when they started talking about impeachment, there were a couple of things that the Democrats said, the more moderate Democrats said, that were necessary in order to have an impeachment. One, you had to have bipartisan support, and two, most important of all, you had to have the people supporting impeachment. You're not going to get the people supporting impeachment when the polling data shows the president's favorability rating at 53%. It's not going to happen. And so they may go on this desire. However, there's another thing, and I think historians will look back at this particular situation that I'm about to put on the table and say that was a turning point in the direction of this country. And that was when William Barr said before the Senate Investigating Committee, yes, I believe there was spying on the Trump campaign. Because that statement, while we know it to be true, the Democrats did everything within their power to try and stop that statement from happening. I think Mr. Barr has been, in fact, the right person to come in to head up the Justice Department, because I don't think, even with all the people that have resigned, we've cleaned up the problems at the deep state in both the Justice Department and the FBI. And I think that the Horowitz investigation as the IG for the Justice Department, and I think Barr is going to take a real hard look at Hillary and what she did with her emails, and look at the involvement of Steele in creating the dossier. Again, this is another thing that in my research that I looked at, and I couldn't understand why this particular law wasn't enforced. There's a federal election commission law that says foreign nationals, citizens of other countries, who are not citizens of the United States cannot be involved in the managing, running, or influencing campaigns in the United States. Clearly, Steele, with his dossier, had a active role, and that's a felony for a foreign national to be involved in a campaign. But they're not talking about that. So I think that Barr, when he brought spying to the table, sent a message to the Democrats that we're going to try and figure out what the hell happened here, and we're going to let the cards lay where they do. And I think that the Democrats should think very hard about this issue of impeachment, because the American people are not on their side. In fact, the last survey I saw, 47% now believe that the collusion was between Hillary and the Russians.
Yeah, and we also have a situation, Dan, where we have the Office of Inspector General who has been investigating the bad actors at the DOJ, and you have the president who has said for a long time he's going to declassify FISA, these the applications that led to the spying, and they used the Steele dossier as the basis for that. And I'm just curious now. I mean, I know why he didn't declassify it at this point, because they would have then. I feel like Robert Mueller was attempting, if there wasn't any collusion and they knew it from the beginning, then their only play was to agitate the president to get him to do something that they could then say was obstruction. For example, there was remember all of a sudden Trump was going to fire Rod Rosenstein, and there was all these reports about it, but then he didn't. And then, Rod Rosenstein's going to the White House to meet the president, but then he didn't meet the president that day. He had to wait. It's almost as if they wanted him to fire Bob Mueller or to fire Rod Rosenstein so that they could get the bipartisan support for impeachment.
Right. And he didn't fall for that. And as has been pointed out, he's been extremely vocal, but being extremely vocal did not influence the cooperation of the administration and the president to providing virtually almost everything that Robert Mueller wanted in his investigation. Millions of pages of documents, testimony by administration officials, his own lawyer, all of that was made available to. So they didn't get what they were looking for, and because it wasn't there, and what they tried to manufacture, he was smart enough that he didn't let them manufacture it. So that's why this is almost a non-event, even though it's in writing. But it's really a black eye, if at the easiest in our nation, and I think it's worse than that.
So, do you think that they should go after McCabe? I mean, if they did something wrong, meaning if the Inspector General's report is released and we figure out exactly what was happening, we've got criminal referrals. We don't have the specific names, but we can guess, from Devin Nunes to the Justice Department. Do you think that justice should be done here?
Absolutely. I think the American people, the longer it goes that nothing happens. I mean, when we had the senator from Vermont, I think it was saying, well, Mr. Attorney General, don't you think we've done enough? Or do we really need to investigate what was this and what was that? And he said, yes, we need to find out what had happened, because it was illegal and we don't want it to happen again at another president. And I think that's the right attitude here. We have to make sure that this doesn't happen again. And that means we have to destroy the deep state infrastructure. And the only way we can destroy it is through sunshine.
All right, I know this is what we were going to talk about. So let's move on to some international news about North Korea.
Sure.
And I know we spent most of our time on the Mueller report, but I mean, it's just such huge news. But there's also, I think everybody wants peace with North Korea. I think we're rooting for President Trump on that. But North Korea says it's tested a new weapon. What's the news there?
That's a great question. I think, I don't know whether you're married and you have any children. I have 4 children and 4 grandchildren. And I think what we saw with Kim, if you look at what was fired, what we have is a petulant child crying out for attention. You know, the president walked out on the last summit with Kim, and he's indicated he'd like to have another one. And the president said, depending upon their actions, he might be interested in it, but he didn't agree to it as he might in the past. And so I think that North Korea Kim had to find a way to get back on the stage, if you would, in the world spotlight. But he knew that if he did anything with nuclear weapons, he would be toast. It would be over. So he used a non-lethal test of a rocket, a tactical military weapon that was not nuclear, to call attention to himself again and say, "Hey, look, I'm over here. I can shoot these things. I can still do this." And but he only went so far. So I think it was an outbreak by a petulant child who wanted to have some attention on the world stage, and he felt like he was being neglected, so he had to do something. And he didn't get the response that he thought he was going to get. And remember, there's a long history of the Kim family of manipulating America by saying, we'll do this if you do that, and then we would do that, and then they never did what they wanted to do. So I think it's a petulant child outburst, and the president would like to have a peace situation, a denuclearization, and I do believe that Kim wants that, but he wants more of the credit.
Dan Perkins, it's always great to have you on the program, sir. I really appreciate your thoughts, and we look forward to talking to you again.
Thank you for having me, and have a blessed Easter.
You too. You too. Happy Easter. Dan Perkins, nationally recognized expert on foreign policy and energy. He's a contributor over at Daily Caller, Newsmax, The Hill, and you definitely need to follow him and check him out. It's always great to have him on. Folks, it's Johnny Cash Friday on Good Friday. We'll be back in just a moment.
Really, I always love it whenever people have personal attacks and stuff like that. And I see that with Jim Hendren, too. He's a classic example. He does that to get the focus off of what he's done.
Now, talk about that, Brian. Expand on that. The idea that you would just make something personal, you're saying that deflects from looking at the substance. Let's say if you have grown government, or you've raised taxes, or you've kind of taken the progressive way of governing, and you know the people don't want it. Are you saying that it's just much easier if you make it personal, then then you get the emotional, which is what the liberals do. They like to have emotional arguments, not fact-based arguments.
Yeah, I mean, it's all today. It's not even conservative. Literally, it's in the person where they just say, "Oh, you're being mean and you're a bully and you can never be happy." You remember how, for years down there they said that about me, and that's all they kept saying is, Brian's just mean. He's a bully, and that's what to get the focus off of. Actually, because they want to get the focus off of what you're saying and the facts. They don't want to tackle that.
Yeah.
All they want to say is this. And it's always that I'm a victim, never the cause. Mm-hmm. And,
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Really, I always love it whenever people have personal attacks and stuff like that. And I see that with Jim Hendren, too. He's a classic example. He does that to get the focus off of what he's done.
Now talk about that, Brian. Expand on that. The idea that you would just make something personal. You're saying that deflects from looking at the substance. Let's say if you have grown government or you've raised taxes or you've kind of taken the progressive way of governing, and you know the people don't want it. Are you saying that it's just much easier if you make it personal, then then you get the emotional, which is what the liberals do. They like to have emotional arguments, not fact-based arguments.
Yeah, I mean, it's all today. It's not even conservative. Literally, it's in the person where they just say, "Oh, you're being mean and you're a bully and you can never be happy." You remember how for years down there they said that about me, and that's all they kept saying is, Brian's just mean. He's a bully, and that's what to get the focus off of actually because they want to get the focus off of what you're saying and the facts. They don't want to tackle that.
Yeah.
All they want to say is this. And it's always that I'm a victim, never the cause. Mm-hmm. And, let's say it. It's working. And unfortunately, one reason why it's working is because they feed the money machine. As long as they can give $50 million back in tax cuts and then take $70 million over here and they have a net $20 million, they can take that $20 million and they feed the Medicaid mafia. The Medicaid mafia down there has literally ran the system in Arkansas, and it still does today. And you can see why bills fail and why debate doesn't happen. And, just like I said, this thing with all the corruption going on down there, and, it took years for me to see it. I mean, there was a lot of times I didn't want, you just didn't think it or something was odd, and then later it comes out. And now I look back and see a lot.
It's Johnny Cash Friday, Good Friday. I hope everyone does have a blessed Easter Sunday and a great weekend. Thanks for starting the beginning of your Easter weekend with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, Conduit News Radio. Does the Republican Party of Arkansas have a crisis of leadership? Yesterday in the newspaper, we saw that the governor said that this past session, was the, quote, greatest of all time. I find that interesting, the need to brag on your achievements in such a way. Most of the time, the achievements speak for themselves. Plus, we don't even really know. A lot of these laws haven't even taken effect yet. Does the Republican Party of Arkansas have a crisis of leadership? I think, based on current results from the past that have materialized and what we're living through now, the answer is yes. Case in point, a session where you raise the tax burden on the people of Arkansas, and a Republican calls it the greatest of all time. Crisis of leadership. Back in just a moment.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
A lot of different things. At the time when you're in that whirlwind, you don't see it. But this is what happened. This is a classic example of why we are different than them. okay? Because you go out there with facts and everything like that, question them and everything, well, then it's the victim mentality, or it's, I did the greatest thing ever. Well, you know, you get to focus on the comment except what happened. And, of course, a lot of the media, the Capitol reporters down there, you know, they're just part of the propaganda machine. I mean, my gosh, look at what's come out in court documents. There's been a mountain of things that need to be investigated, questioned, everything like that, and there's nothing. I mean, there's some coming out with some of them, but yet there has been so much more related back to the Hutchinson and the Hendrons and all that, and they say nothing. I mean, Jim Hendron, you know, once again, $4,000 to Jake Files, who winds up in prison for bribery. You know, no more further questioning on that. You can interchange money between legislators, no problem. So you've had no payment, no obligation loans, nothing on that. And, you know, like I said, once again, it's all about that. And then the response back is, well, you're mean, or you're a bully, or you're attacking my war record, or you're doing this or that, anytime you question them. And so it gets the focus off, and the media is all too willing, a lot of the media, not some of them, a lot of the media is all too welcome to help report that.
Yeah. We're talking with former Senator Brian King. You mentioned real quick some of these other people who've been mentioned in guilty pleas or indictments, you know, Senator A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, we might be setting a record for using the most letters of the alphabet to describe political actors in indictments. You think there are more people who haven't been indicted, and if so, I mean, is it because you think maybe they're cooperating with the government?
I don't know, and just because you've been named in something does not mean you've done something wrong. And, you know, but, you know, so I'm not saying that. What I will say is that there has been a cabal down there that has protected each other to the point that they fought any type of disclosure or any type of question that went to the heart of trying to find out what the true motivation is to try and do that. I mean, we had it in court, once again, we didn't talk about nothing reported on. We have it in court documents that a legislator was talking about trading his vote for the private option or other money that they got kickbacks out of. No reporting on it. No questions asked. I'm just saying questions asked. I'm not even saying something's wrong. I'm not even saying something's criminal. But once again, I mean, I don't know how you could sit back and look. Like I said, it took a while for me to see it. I mean, I'll admit that. And it took a while to kind of grasp your head. But the turning point to me was when it was reported out, when Lamoureux got the $120,000. I mean, we knew Gilbert Baker was getting that money and everything. Okay. When Lamoureux got the $120,000 from Faith and Freedom to do consulting work, for his answer was to recruit candidates and inform people on issues. That's what he was reported as saying. Okay? I was a Republican leader, 2009, recruited candidates, raised money, did all this stuff. You know what, Paul? I did it out of my own pocket. Okay? I didn't get a consulting fee. Didn't even think about it. And these people now that go out there and try and defend themselves in taking money, can you make mistakes or bad judgments or something like that and everything down there in that whirlwind you don't know and don't trust it? Yes. But the fact is, Lamoureux and Jeremy Hutchinson, just what's been outlined in court documents alone, okay, they're innocent until proven guilty. I have my own opinion about it. But you could look at it, it's totaled $1.5 million or so. I mean, we're not talking about, you know, a steak dinner at Doe's or something. You know, we're talking about Jeremy Hudson's been outlined that he got payment for almost totaling $1 million in two entities alone.
And you know, and he was using, and this, you know, he was using his position to essentially pass legislation, hold up budget.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
It's Friday. Jesus is praying. Peter's asleep. Judas is betraying. But Sunday's coming. It's Friday. Pilate's struggling. The council is conspiring. The crowd is vilifying. They don't even know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The disciples are running like sheep without a shepherd. Mary's crying. Peter is denying. But they don't know that Sundays are coming. It's Friday. The Romans beat my Jesus. They robe him in scarlet. They crown him with thorns. But they don't know that Sunday's coming. It's Friday. See Jesus walking to Calvary. His blood dripping. His body stumbling. And his spirit's burdened. But you see, it's only Friday. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The world's winning. People are sinning. And evil's grinning. It's Friday. The soldiers nailed my Savior's hands to the cross. They nailed my Savior's feet to the cross. And then they raised him up next to criminals. It's Friday. But let me tell you something. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The disciples are questioning what has happened to their king. And the Pharisees are celebrating that their scheming has been achieved. But they don't know it's only Friday. Sunday's coming. It's Friday. He's hanging on the cross, feeling forsaken by his Father, left alone and dying. Can nobody save him? Oh, it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. It's Friday. The earth trembles. The sky grows dark. My King yields his spirit. It's Friday. Hope is lost. Death has won. Sin has conquered. And Satan's just a laughing. It's Friday. Jesus is buried. A soldier stands guard, and a rock is rolled into place. But it's Friday. It is only Friday. Sunday is a coming.
And so, welcome to the program. Hour number 2, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for being with us. It's Good Friday. I hope you guys have a wonderful Easter weekend. Thanks for starting the beginning of it with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. You know, I try when listen, my identity is in Jesus Christ. It's not in being a talk radio host. It's not in being a politician. It's not in being a dad. It's not in being a husband. At least that's That's not that I never, mess up and think otherwise. I do, right, all the time. But so I say all that, preface it with what I'm about to say. I get really frustrated sometimes because of the lack of truth. And one of the things that is so, and I've said this before on the show, when we talk about, well, do you believe in a constitutional republic? Are you for democracy? Are you for... Honestly, in my heart, I'm a monarchist because I look forward to the day when the king will return. And I look forward to the day when Jesus will return. Because he's already been risen from the dead. You know how devastating it would be for Christians if they found the bones of Jesus somewhere? It would be devastating. You're not going to find them, though. And what I mean by truth is, I'll give you an example. And this is the world we live in right now. This is where we are. This is the arena that we're in, right? We still live in a fallen world. We have, as Christians, the first fruits of the Spirit. We have creation that is groaning, the Bible tells us, waiting to be made whole again. And I'm summarizing here in some instances. But in matter of fact, in terms of protesting, I love the fact that here in America we have protests and everything else, and I don't think a lot of people realize that when you corporately gather to worship, like when you corporately gather, many of you are going to go to church this Sunday, maybe for the first time in a long time. I would. First of all, I'd love to encourage you, if you're listening to this, to maybe start getting in a habit, maybe get connected to a Bible-believing church. I think that'd be good for you, and I would hope it would produce fruit in your life. But in many ways, when you gather together corporately, you're protesting the lies of the world. You're protesting really one of the most ultimate concepts of death. Especially this Easter Sunday, the idea that Jesus Christ died, was the atonement for sins, was an acceptable sacrifice to God to make you presentable before a perfect and holy God. And then he rose from the dead, shattering the ultimate physical barrier of this realm, of this existence, the curse itself. It's pretty awesome. And it's what gives us so much hope, and it's what everybody around you is going to say, right? Or at least the secular world says that this isn't real, that life, increasingly the philosophers of the day, life is just a bunch of chemicals that come together and then die, and then you're nothing. And folks, that's just not true. When you go and you worship King Jesus this Sunday, you are protesting the lies of the world, the lies of the enemy, the power of the prince of the air. That's what you're doing, or that's what I would encourage you to do from that mindset, and embrace the victory that Christ bought. So I'm a monarchist in terms of, especially in my line of work, where I watch grown men lie to other people's faces. I watch people in a lot of senses, and I'm guilty of imperfection. I mean, I make mistakes all the time. Sometimes I'm wrong, and I don't want to admit I'm wrong, because I'm a human being. A lot of people don't want to admit they're wrong. But I was thinking the other day, if it wasn't for Conduit News, just in terms of what we're doing in Arkansas, nobody else, there would be so many people that would just be listening to their leaders. And because they have a certain party's letter next to their name, they would believe everything that they were being told. There would be no dissenting voice. And so when I say that I'm a monarchist, just specifically when it comes to this job, I'm talking about the day where truth is there are no longer two sides of facts. There are no longer two sides of truth. There's no longer, well, technically, we cut your taxes. No, there's none of that when in fact you raised them. In this arena, and again, I don't define every everything that every way I look at the world. I don't define it as a talk radio host with this particular platform, but I have been spending a lot of time working since January, specifically down at the Marble Palace, and I will just tell you, it is encouraging. It's really one of the only things that it gets me by is that one day there will be objective truth that no one can argue with, even those who still despise God and whose hearts are still hostile towards God. That's the whole concept of every knee will bow, every tongue confess, right? That there will be a day where the knowledge of God, in the Bible it says, the knowledge of God will be known throughout the entire world. I believe that's somewhere in the Old Testament, Isaiah, or one of those. Anyway, the knowledge of the Lord will be known throughout the entire world. That day will come, and it's because the kingdom was birthed on the cross after the resurrection. The kingdom was conceived then on the cross at the resurrection, and one day it will be birthed, and when it will be fully realized when Jesus comes back. That's the part of the gospel. If you were going to tell the story of the gospel, if you were going to present the story of gospel, God creates man, man falls, God to point. To glorify himself, he has this gospel. He creates a people. He creates a line. Through that line, you have Jesus. You have man in flesh. In the beginning, there was the Word. The Word was flesh, dwelt among us. And then you have his ministry. You have the fact that he was perfect. He was blameless. He spent the 40 days in the desert. Satan tempted him. Jesus, by the way, rebuked Satan with Scripture. Satan tried to come at him with Scripture, but it was all, false, out of context. And then he is the sacrifice. He is the ultimate atonement. The atonement that bulls and goats could not fix our problem. Could not fix our imperfection, because God demands perfection. And so we are given that perfection. It is given to us through the blood of Christ if we trust him to make us holy and blameless before God. And so he dies, and he's risen. He rises from the dead, and he's coming again. And that is the gospel this morning. And so if you are anyway, if you wanted to know more about it, you feel free to you could always text the show. Joe would actually love to take your phone call on this subject. 870-275-9799. Actually, Joe would be very, very good at it. All right. Do what? Well, yeah, I'm saying, Joe is what we would call Bible literate, extremely so. Very much so. Anyway, so all that to be said, one day truth will be, truth is already truth, by the way. Truth is already objective. But there are people that say, well, what if you look at it this way, it disproves what there are people that say there isn't that truth is relative. This is the whole thing. Our philosophies are now the guys that we think are that are put out there and put on a pedestal. They're telling you that truth is relative, and that's a bunch of nonsense. It's a bunch of absolute nonsense. The philosophers of old, they at least tried to make everything make sense in a circle, meaning it made sense that's where Christianity fits. Everything fits together, and it's actually. Whereas you have these other philosophies that are trying to, have these competing things where life is meaningless and the truth is relative and everything else. I will tell you that that's not true. The truth is, it's the truth. You don't even need to say truth is truth. The concept of the truth is what is true. It's the one word that is acceptable to define by using the word itself. So anyway, one day, there won't be another side of the story. There's going to be just the truth. And that the truth is the Lamb slain before the foundation of the earth, Jesus Christ. Again, the telephone number 870-275-9799. All right, so man, it is a big day. You know what? I tell you what we're gonna do. Considering that we just spent the first 20 minutes talking about Easter, talking about the gospel, talking about Good Friday, let's go ahead. Can we go ahead and take a break? Because the next Johnny Cash song we have is actually the Gospel Road, which is fantastic. Probably do a better job of explaining the events that we celebrate this weekend better than I. And then we need to get back into some of this James Clapper stuff. Robert Mueller. James Clapper came out and said that you're not going to believe this. I said part of this. He is essentially saying, hang on one second, the headline just disappeared, that it's passive collusion. James Clapper is saying that Donald Trump, this is after the Mueller report, he is now saying that Donald Trump won because Russia swung the election for him. After all of this, we still have people doubling down. It's extremely frustrating, right? So reference my previous comments about truth. We're going to be back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
And so it gets the focus off, and the media is all too willing, a lot of the media, not some of them, a lot of the media is all too welcome to help report that.
Yeah. We're talking with former Senator Brian King. You mentioned real quick some of these other people who've been mentioned in guilty pleas or indictments, Senator A, B, C, D, E, F, G. I mean, we might be setting a record for using the most letters of the alphabet to describe political actors in indictments. You think there are more people who haven't been indicted, and if so, is it because you think maybe they're cooperating with the government?
I don't know, and just because you've been named in something does not mean you've done something wrong. And but so I'm not saying that. What I will say is that there has been a cabal down there that has protected each other to the point that they fought any type of disclosure or any type of question that went to the heart of trying to find out what the true motivation is to try and do that. I mean, we had it in court, once again, when we talk about nothing reported on, we have it in court documents that a legislator was talking about trading his vote for the private option or other money that they got kickbacks out of. No reporting on it. No questions asked. I'm just saying questions asked. I'm not even saying something's wrong. I'm not even saying something's criminal. But once again, I mean, I don't know how you could sit back and look. Like I said, it took a while for me to see it. I mean, I'll admit that. And it took a while to kind of grasp your head. But the turning point to me was when it was reported out, when Lamoureux got the $120,000. I mean, we knew Gilbert Baker was getting that money and everything. Okay. When Lamoureux got the $120,000 from Faith and Freedom to do consulting work, for his answer was to recruit candidates and inform people on issues. That's what he was reported as saying. Okay? I was a Republican leader, 2009, recruited candidates, raised money, did all this stuff. You know what, Paul? I did it out of my own pocket. Okay? I didn't get a consulting fee. Didn't even think about it. And these people now that go out there and try and defend themselves in taking money, can you make mistakes or bad judgments or something like that and everything down there in that whirlwind you don't know and don't trust it? Yes. But the fact is, Lamoureux and Jeremy Hutchins, just what's been outlined in court documents alone, okay, they're innocent until proven guilty. I have my own opinion about it. But you could look at it, it's totaled $1.5 million or so. I mean, we're not talking about, a steak dinner at Doe's or something. We're talking about Jeremy Hudson's been outlined that he got payments for almost totaling $1 million in two entities alone.
And and he was using his position to essentially pass legislation, hold up budget. Hey, this I couldn't believe this, Brian. When the Gazette was reporting, or excuse me, the court, the indictment of Jeremy says that he held up budgets in order to get the bills passed that were favorable for preferred family health care. I thought to myself, wow, this should be big news. Do you remember when the conservatives were trying to hold up the DHS budget to try to, use the Constitution to stop funding for Obamacare Medicaid expansion? And they were doing it legally, and they were, supposed to be the scourge of humanity. And yet here's Jeremy, who was doing it illegally, and, it gets reported, but there's not nearly the amount of outrage.
Well, we all hold up budgets. I held up budgets too. We all requested audits. We did those things, and we did it based on people's everything. And a lot of times, I think a lot of these people, some of these people down there, have got led into things because they didn't see what was behind the scenes. Certainly, I never didn't see so much like with Lamoureux until the $120,000 come out. And, I mean, that's just a straight check. I mean, if you're making $40,000 a year, that's 4 years of work you would have to do to make $40,000 a year. He made it in one check for doing something that and in his answer in public was really downright embarrassing, to say the least.
Yeah, and to remind
but
everybody.
But there's no questions about that. If you start questioning things about that, you start saying something, well, then here they come. And then here the Medicaid mafia comes in, funding dark money. There is a documentary out there that you Google. It's called Dark Money, and it's on Montana and all the races up there. And it's from a left perspective, but people really need to watch that. And it shows this, and, it just allows these groups to do whatever they want to. And, there's things that go on with money and things like that are okay. I mean, that could pass. But it's not whenever you're, trying to expose corruption and things like that. And that's why I'm for, in all this money, if you want to get down to the root of everything, it's just no limits and open disclosure.
Yes.
Nowhere who's funded who what.
I agree, 100%. I think that would solve the problem. Senator Brian King, former Senator Brian King, it's always great to have you on. I really appreciate your perspective, sir. Thank you for spending time with us.
Yeah, I'm going back to work.
All right, going back to work. We've got to take a break here. I do want to point out in this article, this article where Asa Hutchinson says that it was the greatest session of all time. They go over some of the achievements. Quote, the legislature also made changes to fund 9/11 systems more efficiently. Made changes. What exactly were those changes? Oh, yeah, increasing your cell phone tax bill. That's right. But the Gazette calls it, they made changes. They raised your taxes to do it. Unbelievable. Back in a minute. All right, welcome back. When we come back, I want to get to some dank memes, and I want to get to Tucker Carlson, what he said about the Mueller report. Also, Brian Williams, the bastion of credibility, Brian Williams, asking Jay Sekulow, where exactly in the report does it say no collusion? And then Jay Sekulow reads him verbatim where it says it in the report. It's pretty funny. You need to check it out. It's up at thedailycaller.com right now, folks. But here's another question. This is the same question that we asked 30 minutes ago today. 30 minutes ago, we asked you, in the Arkansas Republican Party, is there right now a crisis of leadership? I mean, look at the results that we have. Look at the numbers. You start adding them up. Last week we were asking you, what's the number? What do you think it to be? What's the number of the total amount of tax increases, meaning a net tax increase? I noticed yesterday, and I mentioned this yesterday, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette actually claimed that there were changes made to the 911 system to make it more efficient. Changes. They said changes were made. Changes? Don't you mean tax increases? Since when did we quit calling a tax increase, and instead the newspaper calls it a change? I mean, that just doesn't make any sense. Specifically, it was an increase in your cell phone bill, I believe. There's a tax on your wireless devices if they have data plans. Crisis of leadership? I think so. But they say it was the greatest session ever. Back in a minute.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
I understand we got a special guest on the line. We've got the former state senator Brian King is back with us. Brian, how you been, sir?
Hey, you're doing good. Just working and,
Working,
making payments and paying my taxes and stuff.
Yep, doing the right thing. Well, I'm just curious. The session, 92nd General Assembly session's over. Were you watching things that were happening from afar back home?
Well, I still read the propaganda out of a lot of the newspapers that we see, and of course the article today popped up. And
what do you think about that article today? Governor Hutchinson says that the 92nd General Assembly was, quote, the greatest of all time.
Well, I just go back to see my real life is being a farmer, and it's that old saying, wait till the hay's in the barn, wait till whatever you want to say about the session and this and that. And I saw a lot of things and a lot of debatable things happen, but you have to wait. And, of course, they go to the liberal people to give their assessment of his, comment. And, of course, they go back to expansion of government type things. But I would say probably one of the greatest sessions that turned out was even before I came, when Governor Huckabee was down there. And then when he left, leaves almost $1 billion surplus. And that session in 2007 that I came in, which I can't take credit for it. Give the credit to Governor Huckabee. We only did what he left. And he leaves almost $1 billion surplus. We have the largest tax cutting, not tax raising, not raising this, taking money out of one person's pocket, trying to give it to another one. And, the largest tax cutting session in Arkansas history happened in 2007 because of the work of Governor Huckabee and legislative leaders before when I came in. And we gave $456 million to schools. That was money in the bank that went out into construction that we might have disagreed how that might have been spent, better spent in highways or less in schools or this, that. But the fact is, you had money in the bank. I really am like, today's society is more about what you say than what you produce later, because you're just going to try to talk your way out of it or lie or get out of it once things don't turn out the way they do. I don't know how anybody can sit there and say something like that, even if it was Brian King, when you don't even know the results yet. That just blows my mind.
Have you been following all of the tax increases that happened this session? And I know we have some Republicans who are saying are going to try to tweak the numbers and make it seem like it was somehow a net tax cut. But we have other Republicans. Matter of fact, I saw a Facebook post by State Representative Jim Dotson, who said, you know what, the bottom line is this: the people are going to be paying more money after this 92nd General Assembly.
Yeah, there's going to be more paid in taxes than there will be given out. That's what happens in today's world. That's why. Look at. We go back to the history. This is not a surprise. This is a product of what's been happening down there. We have all these Republicans oppose Obamacare. Oppose Obamacare. What do? They go down there and implement Obamacare in a more expensive form of Obamacare, and then 2015. Let's go back to Jim Hendren. How the private option is going to end, but it didn't end. Okay, it just has kept going. And so, it just keeps going. That's why this is such a perplexing time today to sit there and see how, the results of things doesn't matter. They just repackage it, lie, whatever they need to do. And then what you see now is they try and attack you personally and just tell lies about you and misinterpret anything you say towards them to get the focus off of what is really happened down there. Is that, they're going to pay more taxes, but there's no accountability in the truth out there in the media. There's some good reporters out there, and I think they've heard me say that. They know who I think they are. But yet, if you look at what's happened up there at the Capitol and the reporting, it's like this article. I don't know. It just is very troubling to see what's been going on. And, just keep fighting it. I don't sit there and back down. The other day, John Moritz, who covered some of the Senate Judiciary Committee meetings, was disparaging Jeremy Hutchison.
870-275-9799. Welcome back to the program. Let's start with a meme. In light of the Mueller report, I think this is my favorite. It's a short one. Let's go with the Ferris Bueller one for a second. Here we go. Listen, this is the mad liberals. Do people think that Trump colluded? And it's pretty short. It's only 17 seconds. Watch this. Yeah, do we have it? Uh-oh. It's Bob Mueller's face, and it's imposed over Ferris Bueller. You may want to refresh that so we can get it. And here he is at the end of the movie.
You're still here? It's over. Go home.
Oh, that's the best one. But I tell you what my favorite one is. My favorite one would be Superman 2. Do you remember Superman 2 where you have the Kryptonians who are stuck in the Phantom Zone and they come to Earth and they realize, oh, wow, Earth's got a yellow sun. We're from from Krypton, red sun, where we didn't have powers, but the yellow sun is giving us all these powers. And so Superman 2 with Christopher Reeve, you've got he's got 3 other Supermen essentially to deal with. Okay, and this is Mueller's gang tries to take down the president of the United States. Start it over, Joe. But this one actually might be my favorite.
And now, finally, kneel.
Bob Mueller on Zod's superimposed on Zod. There's
Take
General
my
Zod.
hand and confess.
Melania's
Russian
being held
collusion.
captive by Hillary Clinton. Lois Lane is Melania. You got to see this. Log on now to Facebook.com/Conduit News if you want to see this, or the YouTube channel if you haven't. Crushing his hand. You throw him up against the wall and he falls down to the depths of the fortress of solitude. And James Comey tries to fly but can't, and he falls into the depths of the fortress of solitude.
He did it to them.
Michael Cohen is Lex Luthor.
Hey, you know something? You're a real pain in the neck.
And then, hang on, now we have President Trump's face imposed on Superman, and he's flying back to the White House with an American flag, putting the dome back on the top of the White House.
I say, make America great again. It could never be done without you.
Oh, and then, I'm telling you, the left can't meme. The right are dank meme lords. What do you think about it? Anyway, it's the @mad_liberals. There's some pretty interesting memes there. So if you want to go to it, @mad_liberals is where you're going to find just a ton of different memes. Okay, so then we have. Let's go to first the Daily Caller article. This headline was interesting to me, where we have Brian Williams, who is not credible at all because he lied, was taken off of NBC, and then he was put back on MSNBC. We have Jay Sekulow being interviewed by Brian Williams. This is, again, up at the dailycaller.com. Whenever you're ready, Joe, click the play button. Here he is. Jay Sekulow. This is the president's lawyer, right? Really, really sharp guy. Go ahead.
Been joined by Jay Sekulow, who is on the president's legal team. Counselor, thank you very much for joining us.
Sure.
My first question, I'm afraid, is going to verge on plain English. Where did the Attorney General get off with that characterization this morning, including 4 mentions that there was no collusion? What document was he reading compared to the one we're left with?
Well, page 2 of the document says the investigation did not establish that members of the Trump campaign coordinated with the Russian government in its election interference activities. So it's right from the document itself.
Have you
can go
read part 1?
I have read part 1 and part 2.
You find good news in here for the president and the administration?
He just read it to you.
Not page 181. The investigation did not establish that the contacts described in Volume 1, that's the Russian contacts, amounted to an agreement to commit any violation of federal criminal law, including foreign influence and campaign finance laws. Yeah, I think it's a very good win.
Nicole Wallace.
Hi, Jay.
Hey, Nicole.
How you doing?
Hey, Nicole. How are you? Good.
I'm not a fancy lawyer, so maybe we can switch over.
You're very smart, though. Go ahead.
To normal people speak.
Good grief.
I've read a lot of news accounts with your quotes about the rebuttal. Are you intending to rebut any part of the obstruction report that Robert Mueller released today?
Right now, we were prepared, and as you can imagine, as lawyers would be, for multiple scenarios here. Right now,
all right, stop.
We're responding
to
the media.
Listen. The media, they're crazy. They're crazy. At this point, they can't. They're not capable of seeing the truth. It literally is going to take like a supernatural occurrence for them to see the truth. They just simply are not. They're doubling down. All of the people who are under investigation, all of the people who have already been under investigation for years at the Office of Inspector General, they're now coming out and saying the Mueller report's a roadmap to impeachment. They can't let this go. They're struggling. The American people see it, and it's very much embarrassing. Fake news is the only way to describe it. And you know what's genius about this is the term fake news, ladies and gentlemen, was first coined by the Clinton campaign because of all of the emails and the fact that she was under investigation by the FBI. She deleted 30,000 of them, and people were the memes. That's exactly right. You talk about the memes. We're just showing the video memes or the photo memes of Clinton. The ones where she's in orange, talking about wiping her server with the cloth. She's in this orange pantsuit. People are like, you better get used to that orange, sweetheart. And, they were circulating. And so the Clinton campaign comes out with this thing, fake news. Hillary's not a criminal, fake news. And Donald Trump co-ops it. Once again, they fell into their own net. And it's something that I've never seen before in my life. This is my 10th year in radio covering politics. I've never seen anything like this type of, and I know the media is going to continue to do it. I know if you listen to CNN, you're going to continue to get bad news. And I don't know what it's going to take for the journalists to, you almost need to fire everybody and actually get some people in there that are going to be honest with you. Because their credibility is diminishing, and I feel like if Trump wins in 2020, I don't know, the media will be, talk about the people at the end of the Democrat Party. No, it's the end of the media blockade on the truth is what this is. Listen to Tucker Carlson last night. I feel like this monologue summed it up. Matter of fact, it even got a retweet from the President of the United States. Go to the Breitbart article here. One second. Carlson, Mueller report is the single most humiliating thing to happen to the White House press corps in the history of the United States of America. Listen to this.
So after 2 long years, here we are. It's hard to believe that any of it actually happened looking back. It was 2 years of unremitting, never diminishing hysteria about Russia. It was a continuous wave of panic and superstition over unseen Slavic interference, all stoked by the very people we're told are the most rational in our society. For 2 years, our capital city became a kind of massive CNN panel, a living monument to ignorance and dishonesty, where the loudest and the dumbest invariably.
Tucker Carlson, he's right. We are told, and oftentimes, we could even see an Arkansas connection here, where the people in positions of power, the press tells you, are the most rational and are the ones who have the most credibility. So, James Comey, he's so credible. Brennan, former head of the CIA, so credible. Clapper, Director of National Intelligence, former, so credible, and they're going out there. McCabe, the deputy FBI director who was fired and he shouldn't have been. They're so credible, and there's not one shred of news or discovery about what they actually did that was illegal or potentially illegal. The media refuses to report it and refuses to admit that these people are actually not credible and they need to be investigated because they hate the president so much. They have to get personal. You have to make it personal in order to deflect away from what they've actually done. And so they're playing the victim card really nice. Isn't it really weird? And you can see this here at the local level in Arkansas. Politicians will play the victim in order to distract from what they have done policy-wise, or in the case of the FBI and the DOJ, spying on a political campaign that they didn't want to win the White House. Make yourself a victim. Now, isn't that weird? It's like, how in the world is the former director of the FBI, James Comey, a victim when he was fired legally by the President of the United States, and yet he's a victim? And everybody gets out their little tiny violins and they play it for James Comey. We're so sorry, James, that he treated you this way. It's preposterous. He's right. Tucker Carlson's right. Keep going here. This was Tucker, again, saying that this was an embarrassment for the press.
Got the most attention. We just lived through 2 full years of that. Screaming, threatening, surveillance, character assassination, loyalty tests, wild allegations of treason and spying and betrayal from office holders. Innocent people found themselves afraid to go to dinner, scared to send text messages or talk on the phone. For 2 years, we lived in an all-pervasive cult of personality. Our leaders worshipped a 74-year-old federal prosecutor who almost never spoke in public. He alone was good, they told us. Only they could interpret his will.
He's exactly right.
It was
Stop.
all thoroughly bizarre.
This is exactly right. Remember, have yourself a Mueller little Christmas. It's Mueller time. They essentially thought that this guy was going to solve all their problems, which is exactly what the left does. They'll basically give away all their rights and liberties to one man if they promise them good things, and so they're just hoping, please, put Hillary in office, show this was all a scam and everything else. For 2 years, Tucker Carlson's exactly right. We've been living this. And he's right about the press corps. He called the handling of the Mueller report humiliating for the White House press corps. Not the White House, but the press. These are hysterical children. They should not be in journalism, but they are. In fact, they run journalism, and they have no plans on giving up their power. The Mueller report is probably the single most humiliating thing that has ever happened to the White House press corps in the history of this country. So how did reporters in Washington respond today when it finally came out? Well, they did what they do best. They celebrated themselves. And they did. They tried to say that they hadn't misled their audience. They tried to say that they were right, that the report somehow proves. Isn't that weird when the reporters had to make the story about them? Instead of reporting on it, they couldn't help it. They couldn't just read no collusion, because then they have to say, well, technically all of our reporting was accurate. We got to pat ourselves on the back. Why? The story's not about you. But it is, isn't it? The media has become so hyper-partisan, folks, that they themselves are now part of the stories that they're supposed to be neutral in. So, in essence, they're essentially they've exposed themselves. They've become so they're now the story. The media is now the story. The American people have made the media the story. The media has made the media the story. The Attorney General William Barr. The Attorney General William Barr was saying one of the considerations here was the fact that there was no crime committed, but the president was so frustrated with the media and the press because they were essentially trying to lie to the people and get them to think that he's some KGB agent. Excuse me. Fascinating times that we live in. Fascinating times. Again, the former campaign chief of Hillary Clinton, quote, John Podesta, Mueller got us this far. Now it's Congress's turn to weigh the evidence against the president and decide what merits a response and act in the best interest of our democracy. Are you kidding me? Even Kellyanne Conway's husband, who's, I don't know what he's so worried about. Quote, what the Mueller report disturbingly shows with crystal clarity is that today there is a cancer in the presidency, President Donald J. Trump. Congress now bears the solemn constitutional duty to exercise that cancer without delay. What is wrong with this man? What is wrong with him? ABC News' Jonathan Karl and George Snuffleupagus. Thursday, ABC's special news coverage of the release, Robert Mueller's report. Chief Washington correspondent for the network, Jonathan Karl, said the report details, quote, significant contact, even, quote, collusion between Donald Trump's presidential campaign and Russia. Karl said, quote, there is significant material in here that we do not know on the question of collusion. Now, of course, there's no finding that anybody in the Trump campaign was guilty of criminal conspiracy in terms of, see, now they're talking about criminal conspiracy. And they're saying technically it was collusion. So dishonest. They've never talked about criminal conspiracy before. They're talking about collusion the whole time. Now that there's no collusion, they say criminal conspiracy, but collusion is real because we're right. Andrew McCabe, who needs to be very worried. He needs to be a very, very worried man. On Rachel Maddow, quote, I think it does, meaning the report, I think it validates the decisions that we made, certainly in July of 2016 to start the initial Russia-focused investigation, and then, of course, the decisions that were made of May 2017 to include the president in the investigation personally. No, you wait and see. We're going to find out. The Inspector General's report's going to come out. Donald Trump will declassify the FISA court documents at some point, and this will be laid bare for all to see. And I can't wait. I mean, listen, I tell you, one of the key guys in all of this is Sean Hannity, in terms of if you want the news, the latest, it's Sarah Carter, John Solomon, and Hannity. They've been at the forefront of this, and it's unbelievable to see how accurate they have been and how their reporting on it is being completely ignored. But it's gonna break. The dam is going to break, and everybody's gonna know. This is no longer conspiracy theory. Okay, these are hypotheses that. Well, do we have to take a break right now? I got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799.
Called him out on Twitter. The guy never answered. I mean, you know why? Because he protected Jeremy Hudson. There was exchanges between me and Jeremy Hudson. He never did. He disparaged me and tried to protected Jeremy Hutchison, and then now everything's come out bad. He's starting to say things.
What were your thoughts? I mean, Jeremy Hutchison indicted for the second time last week on charges that we thought he was going to be indicted the first time. This was the bribes that he was allegedly taking from Preferred Family Health Care. What were your thoughts on that, considering that you ran a Medicaid disclosure bill several times that could never pass? Four times that would have required Jeremy Hutchison to disclose he was getting $9,000 a month from a Medicaid provider for doing no legal work.
Yeah, but you can have all the laws you want to, and if they don't pay attention to them, remember this ban on lobbying thing, and then you had John Burris, he's a consultant. You had this ban on lobbying, yet they find jobs for Johnny Key and all these other government jobs that are not lobbying, but they're government rewards. I mean, they're rewards for. So there's so many ways to get around it. And, in fact, in a debate on the Senate floor, I asked Jeremy Hudson, "Do you disclose who your clients are?" And he said yes. He lied. He just lied. I mean, I just no questions. Nothing about Jim Hendren and his involvement with Jeremy. You've got to see Michael Lamoureux mentioned. You see court documents came out even a while back. It's been some time that somehow Cranford was working with the governor at that time to get a convicted murderer out earlier or something like that. A convicted felon, let's say. No questions. Nobody asked anything about that. You have Senator S. that comes out in this last thing. No questions about that. So, it's almost like something has to come out in court documents where they have to see it. But, back on this point, my gosh, I just even Governor Beebe would not have said something like that. I mean, it just... You're
talking about Ace's comments that this was the greatest of all time, the greatest session of all time? That's what you're talking about?
Yeah. I don't know. But like I said, once you live in a world down there right now where nobody questions anything, no one says anything, and, they look around and they think, well, you're going to have like a race like mine where you're going to have $200,000+ of dark money for these cowards that fund these races, to sit there and, tell lies about you. I mean, somebody brought up the other day, Americans Prosperity rated me the same as Will Bond and Joyce Elliott. I mean, ouch. And so would you say crooked and rigged on that deal to try and make things? But it just hopefully is anything, the truth will finally come out. And, like I said, I just can't even believe in today's world was you have to wait and see what the end thing is. But that's not the way it goes today. Today you just go out and say whatever, promise anything, lie whatever, and then 2 years later when it turns out bad,
I hope everyone has a great, blessed Easter weekend, and thanks for starting the beginning of your weekend with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. This episode available over at conduitnews.com. We're going to have more about the crisis of leadership that I think we have in the Arkansas Republican Party next week, as well as more impressions of the sessions. And we also got a great show lined up for you, or a great week of broadcasting lined up for you already with our guests. So, folks, we will see you on Monday with Bells on. Arkansas, have a great weekend. God bless you, your family. Be safe.